All right. Well, welcome officially. This webinar is titled Best Practices and Limitations on Creating Workflows Using Visio and SharePoint Designer. Now, there's actually one more aspect that we're going to cover, which is not in the title officially, but that's going to be InfoPath. I feel that InfoPath is already involved in the workflow process, so might as well cover that a little bit. Okay. Let's see here. So my name is Asif Rahmani. I'm a SharePoint Server MVP and a Microsoft Certified Trainer. What I'm going to be covering today is going to be, you know what, I'm seeing there's a little bit of echo here. Hang on a second. Okay, any other organizers of this webinar, please go ahead and mute yourself, otherwise the echo will continue. So organizers, please go ahead and mute yourself. Thank you very much. All right, let's get this started. Who am I? Let's cover this over here. My name is once again Asif Rahmani. Here's my email address if you need to get in touch with me. I'm a SharePoint Server MVP and a Microsoft Certified Trainer. Just a few more things. I'm a principal contributor at SharePoint-videos.com. So we have videos on SharePoint, SharePoint Designer, InfoPath, all no-code solution, how you can make no-code business processes, very, very strong, robust business processes using these products. That's what we talk about there. All right. Yeah, I'm still seeing there's an echo here. Let me go ahead and tell a couple of these folks over here. Sorry about that, guys. And see if I can tell them to mute themselves. Okay, hang on a second. Okay, so organizers, both of you guys, please go ahead and mute yourself. You need to mute yourself.
Yes, I was muted.
Okay, thank you very much. Just go ahead and mute both. Hang on a second, one more message here. Okay, all right, wonderful. I think the echo has disappeared. I appreciate it. So continuing on, what I was saying before is that we have videos on SharePoint Designer, SharePoint, and SharePoint InfoPath, of course. So you'll find lots of no-code solutions. In fact, if you go to the site right now, we have redesigned our free videos section. There's lots and lots of free videos available right now. There's the previous webinars. All the previous webinars are all available right now for free to watch. We have guest videos. We have lots of our subscription-only videos that have been made public right now, and we'll be coming up with even more free videos. So spread the word, check it out. If you like it, let us know. Currently we have 212 videos out there, and we're hoping for a whole lot more. All right, a little bit more about myself. I am very much into SharePoint Designer stuff, workflow stuff. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I do. So that's why I love presenting to these with these kind of events. And thank you very much for joining me for this event. SharePoint Designer 2007 is the book we wrote a couple of years ago, and for SharePoint Designer 2010, we're writing right now, and that's going to be out in a couple of months, maybe less, hopefully. And I also enjoy presenting at conferences, Microsoft Tech Ed, SharePoint Conference, SharePoint Connections, Best Practices Conference, and more, actually. All right, that's enough about me. If you need to get in touch with me, like I said, my email address is right up there. Let's talk about what to expect during this presentation. Now, we'll be talking, giving an explanation and, of course, in-depth scenarios of Visio and SharePoint Designer, and also some InfoPath stuff. Please keep this in mind, though, that this webinar is not going to be doing end-to-end kind of scenarios. And actually, in our last webinar, which is already out on the site, it talked about how you can do an end-to-end solution using InfoPath, using Visio, using SharePoint Designer, and that was more towards that. This is about the best practices and also about the limitations of these products and how it can help you and how it can limit you actually also. So talking about those things, talking about exactly what you can and cannot do with these products, right, and how it can help you. Keep that in mind. For many people, including myself, programming is not an option. It's just That's not the way we roll. Okay. So what do you do then? What is another no-code solution you can create? That is what we're going to try to cover over here. Okay. What are other solutions out there in the market that's available that lets us make no-code solutions? Okay. And lots of show and tell. If you've been to my webinars before, you know that I am not a huge fan of PowerPoint. I use PowerPoint as much as needed, but then after that I jump directly into demos. And there are questions. You can go ahead and put it on the question board. There's a question and answer board like this. I'll try to get to some of them within the presentation, but then the remainder of them I'm going to get to at the end. Let me go ahead and look at the question board right now. Okay. All right, hang on a second here. You know what I'm going to do, guys? The organizers, you will need to come in back again, it seems like, because there still seems to be an echo over here. Okay, hang on, let me check the audio setup here. Okay. How is this right now, guys? Go ahead and let me know if there's an echo. Okay, all right, gotcha. Okay, let's see. All right, how about now, right now? If you guys hear the echo, let me know. Okay, so the echo is still there. All right, one more thing. Let me go ahead and give it a shot. Hang on. Okay, a couple of people have said mute your speakers. My speaker over here is muted. We've done these webinars many times, and it's not that. There is no volume coming out of the PC. Okay. You guys let me know if there's still an echo. Otherwise, I'm going to keep on going. Seems like it's much better now. Okay, a couple of people are saying there's echo. Others are saying it's not echo. Okay. All right, folks, hang on a second. Okay, how about right now, guys? Better? Awesome. Thank you very much. Okay. Yes, I got it. I'm getting lots of people saying better, good, very good. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, folks, for your feedback. Really appreciate this interactivity here. Let's continue so we don't lose too much time over here. So, okay, talking about Visio over here, right? Business analysts can start by modeling workflows in Visio. You need Visio Premium 2010 to be able to work in, to be able to create workflows. Okay, Visio Premium 2010 is required to make workflows. Well, Visio Standard 2010 and Visio Professional 2010 will not work. So if you have those tools, you cannot make workflows. Now, these workflows, when I say making workflows, this is very critical over here. And people think that you can actually make workflows and publish it directly from here to SharePoint Server. That is not possible. You have to model the workflow here. You can put comments on the diagram. You can color things. You can connect different objects, but you cannot publish from here. That is a major, major limitation. And I'll talk more about these things as we go on. So you need to transfer it to SharePoint Designer. That's what you got to do. Transfer it to SharePoint Designer 2010. Once you have it transferred to SharePoint Designer 2010, then after that, you can go ahead and configure your workflow, push it out to SharePoint, right? Configuring means these things right here. You see this? It says meeting being held. So these parameters are what you need to configure. That configuration cannot happen through Visio. It can only happen through SharePoint Designer. So that's also a huge limitation. This is the file, VWI, Visio Workflow Interchange, that you would use to make this transfer. So the Visio Workflow Interchange file is understood, completely by Visio Premium 2010 and also by SharePoint Designer 2010. Visio Standard, Visio Professional, once again, will not work. They won't understand it. Visio Workflow Interchange is a file that both these products produce. And the great thing is, and I'm going to be showing you that, is you can take it back and forth between Visio and SharePoint Designer. Go back and forth. The way I think about this thing is, the interactivity here is that this is a business analyst, right, who's making it over here. And then you have, in here you have, this is a developer, let's say, or a site administrator, or a power user. One of those kind of folks are the one who are making it in SharePoint Designer. Okay. Your ultimate goal, of course, is to put it out on SharePoint Server. That's what you do. Once you have it on SharePoint Server, you can additionally once again use Visio, but now this is for different purpose altogether. This is Visio Services that you can use to go ahead and visualize your workflows. Now, once again, there's confusion over here as to what do I need to make this functionality work. Here's what you need. You need Visio Services, which comes with SharePoint Server 2010 Enterprise. Okay? So let's again recap over here. Visio Premium 2010 is required at the client level to make the workflow. SharePoint Designer 2010 is the one that's required to configure the workflow and then publish the workflow. Okay? SharePoint Designer, of course, is free. Visio is not. Visio you got to pay for. And then SharePoint Server 2010 Enterprise is what's required to make this Visio diagram, live Visio diagram, available on your SharePoint server to show you exactly how things are going, what is going on right now, who the task is assigned to, for example, etc. All right. I want to make sure I can make these points properly. Now, InfoPath comes into the picture because InfoPath is a great electronic form generation tool. Electronic form generation with any Microsoft product, InfoPath is the one that will let you make that happen. Okay, so Microsoft decided in this version that they're going to go ahead and make InfoPath available for many different things that you can do in SharePoint, including making workflow forms. Let's talk about other stuff first. So what can you do? You can make form library forms, right? That actually has existed since 2003. You can make form library forms using InfoPath very easily. Go ahead and publish it to a form library, which acts very much like a document library. People come there, they go ahead and say, I want to fill out a form. For example, it could be a status report form or expense report form, etc., right? And they fill out that form. The caveat there is that if you want them to be able to fill out the form in the browser, then you need to have SharePoint Server Enterprise. Okay, so SharePoint Server Enterprise is what's required if you want them to be able to fill out the form using the browser for form library. Okay, second thing, SharePoint lists. You have SharePoint lists that are everywhere, of course, in SharePoint. Task list, calendar list, links list, announcements list, all different kind of lists, right? Those list forms, and I still teach about that stuff in my 2007 classes, that you can modify those forms. You could modify those forms using SharePoint Designer, but some of the things were extremely difficult to do, modifying the forms, and also some of these things were just not possible. So you ended up going to Visual Studio, or having a developer go ahead and using Visual Studio to go ahead and make the form for SharePoint list. if you don't like the ones that come out of the box, right? Now InfoPath can be used to make those forms. Once again, you need SharePoint Server Enterprise for that functionality. This is the third functionality that I'm showing you right now. This is if you have a workflow and your workflow already creates some forms. Now this is critical. It has to create the forms first. What you're seeing over here, these are workflow forms that were already created by the workflow. Then and only then you can go ahead and click on the actual form in SharePoint Designer and we'll open it up in InfoPath. Let you design it. Now this functionality, that's another misnomer here. People don't realize this, but you do not need SharePoint Enterprise for this. You need SharePoint Standard. Yeah, go figure. But SharePoint Server Standard and above is required for this functionality. If you have SharePoint Server Standard, you have SharePoint Server Enterprise, you're all set. If you only have SharePoint Foundation, no can do, you cannot use this functionality. Just the way it is. All right, moving on. Demo, like I said, I'm going to jump right in. So let's jump in. Let me just bring my environment up. Okay, just a second. Alright, you should be able to see my environment now. And I'm just starting with blank, just a very typical kind of environment. Right now I'm at the top level portal of a site. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a site. Let's see, how about the webinar site? I used this one for another webinar. I'll go ahead and use it again. I'm going to use this webinar site, this regular team site, to do this demo to show you all the things that I want to show you. Before I go here though, let me start with an InfoPath form that I have. I'm going to use this copy of the form, training request form dash copy. Now, okay, so InfoPath Forms, first of all, you need InfoPath client to be able to do what I'm about to do, and InfoPath client does cost money. InfoPath is not free. There are two different InfoPath clients. You get Microsoft InfoPath, where is it? Designer and InfoPath Filler. Okay, Designer is the one that you need to design. Filler is the one, if you don't have SharePoint Server Enterprise, then Filler is the one that people can use, and users can use to go ahead and fill out the form. Got it? Okay. I need to go ahead and open this form in Designer, so I'm going to have to right-click. Don't double-click, but right-click and design. Right-click and design. If you double-click on it, it just opens it up as you want to fill it in the filler. Right-click on Designer, opens up the Form Designer. All right. So here's what I want to do. Right. What I want to do here is go ahead and first of all, actually let's go ahead and make a new view of this form. That's what I want to do first. For a InfoPath form, you can have multiple views. What you're seeing here is just the regular standard view, right? Back and go to Page Design and see this is my View 1 default. I can click on New View, and that will make a new view for me. The new view here is going to be named, let's go ahead and name it Manager. Alright, so this is what a new view looks like, or new view of this form. This is again one of the things that people don't understand, I think personally, as to what are views used for in InfoPath. What is the point over here? Well, views in InfoPath should be, I should say, used to show let's say if you have a very, very long form and you want to split it up into different views. So you can have the view 1 with a button saying next, and that shows second view. So that's one. That's scenario A, let's say. Scenario B would be that if you want to have different people see different things, right? So one person goes and says, I agree with this form, I'm going to sign this form, done. And then goes ahead and goes to somebody else, they see a different view of the form. Now, arranging that to happen is not easy, unfortunately, and does require some code to make that happen. Okay? And there's, I'm sure, a couple other scenarios that I'm missing right now, but that's what you would use different views for your form. So now here's how easy it is to populate your view of this form. If I want my view 1 and manager view to just be a little bit different, you know what I'll do is I'll go over here and do a Control A and a Control C. So I selected everything, copied everything, and now I'm going to go to the manager view, and here I'm going to say Control V. Alright, maybe I should actually select everything first. So Control V, much better. Okay, this is my manager view. Looks exactly the same, right? Here is something to keep in mind also, since I'm getting deeper into the products. That's what I want to focus on right now anyway. The different fields, they point to the data points within the form. That's XML. That's the backend XML that actually makes up the form. All right, name, date and time, etc. All right, XML of course is an awesome language, but you don't want to take a look at it under the covers. So this is how you can hide it. This is how it's hidden, like that. All right. Okay. My view 1 is what I'm going to do over here in the view 1. I'm going to take out the amount. No, actually, I'm going to leave this here. Never mind. Sorry. Talking to myself here. I'm going to go to the manager view, and I'm going to add a separate line in here. Right click, insert, rows below, and this row is going to be called manager approval. Here I'm going to go ahead and insert, or actually go to home. And we'll just put a option button here. Okay, so 2 option buttons is what I'm saying. First where is going to be approve. So I'm going to click on this, go to controls, properties, and control, here we go. Okay, because there are 2 radio buttons, the way this works is that each of them have a value. Okay, and that's the value right now for the first one, 1. I don't want that to be 1. How about we'll call it approve. Okay, and now I'm going to go to the second radio button. The field name is the same, but the radio button itself is different. I'm going to go to control properties. It says 2 over here. We'll say denied. That would work. And I can put some text here also to make it simple. Now I'm doing all these things here, but unfortunately I won't be able to show you the different views, because that's one of my points, that in order to show the different views for the person, whoever signed in, you need to first understand exactly which SharePoint security group they're in, right? Depending on the security group and depending on exactly what level, permission level that security group has, you need to figure out exactly which view to show. And that functionality is something that I get questioned about all the time. And you would require some web service connections to make that happen. Okay, so you need to make a web service connection, figure out exactly who the person signed in, then the form has to go ahead and decide who to show it to. Now the problem here that I usually see is that, you know what if a person is in the reader group and the administrator group, which is very much possible in SharePoint world. What do you do then? Well, of course, the way SharePoint works is that you give the cumulative permission, right? So then that person will be administrator. That's where things get really messy, unfortunately. That's something you should know about. All right, let me go ahead and change this to be called manager. Excuse me. And done. Okay. Now, to publish this form out, I'm going to go to File, Publish, SharePoint Server. Let's go to site over here. Okay. Hang on a second. All right. So what I'm doing over here is I'm going to the site, taking the URL from here, going to InfoPath, pasting it there. Next, 3 different options to publish it to SharePoint Server: publishing to form library, content type or administrator approved form template. I have videos on the site of how you can do it with content type and administrator approved form template. This time I'll go ahead and use a form library. So next, creating a new form library. That is correct. I'm making a new form library using InfoPath and calling it simply training requests. Okay, here are all the fields that I need. Now, here's another thing that I would call maybe kind of a limitation here, because, you know, if I want later to use the information from the InfoPath form in a workflow, then I need to publish those fields or promote those fields as columns in the library. Okay, so here I have taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different fields, and I've gone ahead and I've promoted them to a library. It is possible that you might have a need for promoting maybe 100 fields. That would get messy, okay? But that's the only way to do it. If you want to utilize these InfoPath fields in the workflow, you would have to promote them. That's what this thing is doing. Publish them, whatever you want to call it. Say next, publish. Once it's published, close this. I'm going to go to my browser, refresh this page. Here it is, training request library appears, and here's my library. So now here's what I was saying before: department, date, time, employee name, training requested, amount, all the stuff shows up here, right? Excuse me. And when I make a workflow, and that's what I'm going to do next, when I make a workflow on this library, you're going to see that all these fields are available in the workflow, okay, as long as I attach the workflow to this library. So let's talk about some of the limitations here that I wanted to talk about. I get these emails all the time, so I might as well address it right now in the webinar. First thing, people ask, hey, this InfoPath form, pretty cool, right? You get lots of things that you can collect over here in different fields. Can you push out the information from this InfoPath form directly to a SharePoint list? That's the first question. Second, can you push it out to a database? That's the second question. Can I do any of these things? Now, what I'm doing is pushing it out to a form library, which is great, works perfect. But what about doing it to a SharePoint list or a database? For that, you need a web service. Once again, you need a web service to be able to connect and throw the data from here to your to a list or a database table. Okay, and that should be good. Let me go back over here. Imagine that you needed in the workflow now 50 different fields. What do you do? Because you know InfoPath Forms, the way they're developed, and I'll show you another one later which has a very deep schema. This one is a very, very shallow and small schema form. It's got only 6, 7 fields here. Very easy to deal with, no problem. Real InfoPath Forms don't look like that, the ones that I've seen in the market. So what do you do when you have a deep schema? That's when you're stuck. The only choice that you have currently with the out-of-the-box stuff is you take these fields, you publish everything to SharePoint in the form library, and then you configure the view in the library to hide the things that you need to hide. So you say modify view, and then you go ahead and hide the fields that you don't need to see but still need in your workflow. Okay? All right. Let's move on over here. I'm going to go to open Visio. So here it is, Microsoft Visio 2010. In Visio, if you go to Flowchart, and if you have Premium 2010, then if you go to Microsoft SharePoint Workflow, click on Create, it will give you what's called the stencils with the shapes that you need to make your workflow. Start with the terminators. Now, once again, a limitation here to mention. You can only make sequential workflows using this. You cannot make state machine workflows. Sequential workflows have a definite beginning and definite end. Now the beginning end, by the way, could be here and here. It doesn't matter how you arrange the actual workflow, you know. But it has to have a beginning and it has to have an end. State machine workflows, which are the ones that I've seen used the most in the market, are the ones where, for example, let's say you're making an expense request workflow, right? An expense request, you know, it happens that it will go through a workflow, it will go through some approval process from one person, maybe the next person, and if the workflow it fails because somebody has rejected the actual expense request, the workflow is just going to stop. The workflow is just going to stop, and you have to someone is going to get an email saying that, hey, you need to resubmit your request. It won't just go to the first person or the person who actually submitted it and said, okay, here's the form again, go ahead and make your modifications, go ahead and turn it again, and it's a second pass and third pass and fourth pass. That would be like a state machine workflow where it switches states from one to another depending on the need, depending on who needs to look at the document in this case at that time. So I'm going to go ahead and let's just go ahead and make a simple workflow here because that's all we can do here. Okay, so I'm going to go to conditions, take a compare document field condition, put that on here, another one, put that on here. Now I'm going to go to actions. I'll take the stop workflow action, put that on here. And let's see, that should be good right now. And how about one more action, start approval process. That's a good action. I want to talk to you about that a little bit. And then I'm going to connect these things together. So connector tool, make sure that when you hover over an object, you see this red box, and that's when you can go ahead and connect. Otherwise, it will not connect properly. Okay, there we go. And let's see, stop workflow. Yeah, that should be just like that. Okay. Now, actually, maybe I should not put this one. Okay, I'm just going to leave this the way it is right now. And first thing I want to mention here is that the configuration of the properties of these actions or conditions cannot be done here. Meaning, I cannot say that which document to compare, or which library that I need to attach to, or anything like that. Unfortunately, those things are not covered here, okay? So what do you do? Well, the best thing you can do is comment these things. If, for example, department is IT, okay? Now here, how about if above $1,000 is what they're asking to be reimbursed, or actually, in this case, it's a training request form, so they're asking that, they're going to say that the amount requested for the training is some dollars, right? So if it's above $1,000, let's say, stop the workflow, say maybe too much for the training itself, I mean, in this case. That's what they're saying. All right. Approval process, get approval from manager, let's say. Okay, so now in the conditions you have to make them actually I forgot the connector over here too. You need to make it so it needs to have two paths when the conditions, when it's true, when it's false. What happens, right? So in this case, I'm going to label this. I'm going to right click on it and say yes. In this case, I'm going to say if that's not the case, if it's no. Here, say yes, and I'm going to leave this alone. Let's see what happens. I'm making it so there's an error in the workflow. I'll go to process, click on check diagram. It comes back, says that a connection does not have a yes or no attached to it. So there are rules that are available in Visio. It understands the SharePoint workflows. It will tell you what's wrong. I'll go here, say, what is it? In this case, it's no, right? Okay. Oh, I know what I did wrong over here. Hang on a second. Approval process, approve from manager. Yeah, let me go ahead and take this out. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and make a connection directly from here to there. Okay. Okay, let's look at the workflow right now. Check diagram. Okay. Yeah, there are certain rules that you need to follow, and I just did not follow one rule. So anyway, diagram validation is complete. No issues were found. Wonderful. How do you take this now from here to SharePoint Designer? Easy enough. Process tab, export. You will make a VWI file. We'll call this September webinar.vwi. Save. Done. Now I'm going to go to SharePoint Designer. Now, of course, in SharePoint Designer, you need to open up the site that you need to put this workflow on first. So I'm going to go and get the URL for my site from the browser. In SharePoint Designer, I'll click on Open Site, put in the URL, click on Open. This is also using web services in the back end to go ahead and pull the information about the site. I'll go to Workflows. In this workflow here, I need to import from Visio. Import from Visio. Okay, and I'm going to browse now, and I'm browsing to the sept webinar.vwi file. Okay, so all I did was click on Browse, and going to the VWI file, click on Open, Next. Now here's the thing, you need to attach it to a list workflow or a reusable workflow. A reusable workflow is what I would love to do in this case, but there's a problem. That's another thing that you need to watch out for. If I did say reusable workflow, then what happens is it says that tell me the base content type that you want to use, and then whatever columns, whatever information, whatever properties that are available on that content type and any child content types, I'll let you go ahead and use that for this workflow. So we can't do that right now. We can't go this option because we don't have a content type for the form, right? And that's where things get a little bit more complex. You know, if I had made the form, InfoPath form, into a content type, then I could have used it, but I did not do it. So I'm going to go ahead and attach it directly to training requests. So keep in mind that when I do this, when I make this workflow like that, I can only use it here. If I need to transfer it, there's no supported way to transfer the workflow from one place to another place. All right, finish. Let me show you what you can do here. Okay, always good to name your steps. How about fund travel request? Sounds good. You see the comments did get pushed in. If department is IT, if above $1,000, all that stuff, that's there. Great. But the actual conditions are not configured. Things are not configured because the configuration can only happen through SharePoint Designer. Okay. So how about if field, what field? Department field. These things are coming from the library. As I mentioned, you would have to push the columns, the fields in the InfoPath form to the library before you can use that information. So department is a column. If department equals, let's say, IT. Now here's my comment. It's telling me, let's say now as a developer or as a power user, for example, that I need to go ahead and code this or configure this if current amount equals something, right? Well, not equals, is greater than. The value here being 1,000. Stop the workflow and log a message. Too much. Start approval process on this item. When I click on this item, it automatically picks current item, which is what I want. And when I click on these users, I get this nice task process participants window. Let me go ahead and pick Irene, pick Jay, and this is where you can add stages as well. You know, stages of different approval process, serial, parallel, etc. Very cool functionality. That's in SharePoint Designer now. Let me go ahead and that's fine. I'll click on OK. This approval process, this thing is called the Task Process Designer. It looks very simple, but when you click on the approval link, you can go ahead and really rip out the way things work in here. There's a video that I have out for Task Process Designer as well. Check it out. There's a lot of things you can do in here. Change the actual email that gets sent. Change the things that get added to the workflow list. Change the behavior of how things work out. All those kind of things you can do for the approval process. Anyway, don't have that much time right now, so let me go ahead and show you this. Let's say I'm done. Let me go ahead and publish it. Now, publish, by the way, does the check for errors, saves it, and then publishes it out. That's what it's going to do. I'll do a quick publishing here. And, you know, once I do this, I realize, oh man, it would be really nice if I could go ahead and make the other branches as well. So, you know, currently it says if department is IT, that's great, but what if department is sales? What if department is HR? That stuff is not configured right now. What would have been really cool is if I could take the whole thing, copy it, and paste it down here, right? No, can't do that. Cannot copy this whole thing, cannot paste it down there. Those things are not possible here, but I'm going to show you a trick. I'm going to do export to Visio for this file. And you know what? I'll go ahead and replace the September webinar.vwi file. So save. You want to replace it? Yes. Then I'm going to go into Visio. And here I'll say import. I'm not going to work with the same one that's out there, but I'll click on import first. Now I'm going to click on, what is that? SEPT webinar. There we go. Open. And of course it looks the same, but here it is. That's my SEPT webinar. Let me just make sure it's the right one. Come on. Okay, yeah, so it actually just put it in as drawing 2 because it just took the actual drawing, put it in my design environment. Great. Now what? Well, now what I want to do is take some of these things, shapes, and copy them. Control C, Control V. Just like that. Control C, Control V. Control C, Control V. So now what I'm doing over here is that you can take these shapes, and I won't go through this whole exercise because that's going to take a long time. But I just want to show you and have you believe me, hopefully, that when you do these connections now, if I did this connection from here to here, that if this is no, go here and click on this and say that check for sales. Maybe the for the sales folks, there's a different threshold, $2,000 and all. Connect these together, and if you do everything right, which I'm not sure if I'm doing everything properly right now, because of course I need to have a yes and a no scenario and everything else. Like I said, that might take a while, so I won't go through all that stuff. But here is the way where you can copy your steps, copy all the conditions, copy the actions. Now what you would do after you're done. For me, it won't work because I don't have everything correct, because I don't. The rules are not being followed right now. But if you click on export once, and if it's valid, it's going to go ahead and let you export to the same file. So you would replace the SEPT webinar.vwi file, which is right here. And once you do that, and you go back in here, and you say workflows, import from Visio, you go ahead and point to the same file. Click on next. Okay, so right now, see what it did is it said that, you know what, you already imported before, so I cannot let you import it unless you close the SEPT webinar tab. And that's going to be the same behavior that's going to come up when if I had done the whole, the whole copy and paste of all my connections for the conditions and actions. So import from Visio, SEPT webinar, next. Here's what it does. A version of workflow already exists. Great. It recognized it. Now, here's the thing. This operation cannot be undone if you go ahead and replace the original version with this version. So if I click on finish, it's going to take that stuff, put it over here, well, it replaced all the stuff that I had in the original webinar, in the original SEPT webinar workflow. Okay? Which in this thing is a good thing because this is what you're doing. You're doing version control. You can take the original file, go ahead and put it into like a source safe, or, well, if you're not a developer, then you probably not put it in source safe, but you put it somewhere so it's version, the original version, and then you go ahead and replace the VWI file with the new version of the workflow, and then you use that. Okay, so you can go ahead back and forth as much as you want. Extend this workflow as much as you want. Let's talk about some limitations right now. Okay. If you want to loop back to certain things, so you say if you're stopping the workflow, I want to loop back to where the person originally submitted the form. Can't do it. Cannot do it. It's just going to stop the workflow, notify the person, they have to do it. Okay? If you want to make this a reusable workflow, where you go ahead and take this workflow, publish it out to different libraries, to different lists, once again, you cannot do it unless you go to through the content type route. Publish the form to the content type, attach the workflow to the content type, use the site columns in the content type, etc. But the reality is many knowledge workers don't understand what content types are. They need to have an easier, quicker way of doing these kind of things. All right, I'm going to move on to the next part of my presentation now before it gets too late. So what I did after getting these questions again and again about, hey, what can I do? Here's all the limitations that we just talked about, right? No looping mechanisms, cannot really make workflows in Visio, but you can only model the workflows in Visio. So what do you do? How do you, make it a nice, easy system that a business analyst can understand, and then you can go ahead and publish it out to the SharePoint server? What do you do? Well, the reality is, for any of these things that are listed over here, you would have to go through the Visual Studio route. Visual Studio route would have to be the case. Out-of-the-box functionalities don't give you anything else. Okay. So, what are your options if you don't want to do any coding? If you want to stick to that no coding methodology, what do? That's where the other folks come in. K2, Nintex, AgilePoint, Global 360. That's the 4 out in the market that I personally respect, that I've seen do good work, and that's the reason I'm talking about these folks. There might be others out there, and I apologize for anybody who's on the call and maybe from a different workflow firm for SharePoint. I know there are others, but these are the major players in the SharePoint workflow market. So K2 lets you go ahead. They have a whole proprietary workflow engine, and they let you make some really robust workflows, really nice workflows. Great. Looked at that solution, looked very promising. Nintex. Nintex actually uses the workflow foundation. So the Nintex workflow foundation goes ahead and resides, the Nintex uses the workflow foundation. The actual environment that you make the workflow is within a SharePoint site. Works great. The problem that I saw, maybe limitation, the way you look at it, is that it is also limited by what Workflow Foundation can do. AgilePoint also, kind of like K2, has its own proprietary workflow engine, but AgilePoint, on top of just regular workflow, it does a true business process management. It lets you do business process management scenarios. So not just doing stuff in SharePoint, but also if you wanted to get access to other stuff like Active Directory, Exchange Server, things like that, it will let you do that as well. And so does Global 360. Global 360 also has a nice BPM solution, and it lets you not just do SharePoint workflows, but also get access to other activities, other items from your Active Directory, from your Exchange Server, etc. The only thing that I saw about Global 360 that I did not personally like was that there's a separate environment that you have to publish to. So from Visio, it has to go through a separate environment that it gets published to, and that environment publishes to SharePoint, and that kind of defeats the purpose in my mind, because that's what I'm doing right now with SharePoint Designer, right? So what I'm going to talk about for the remaining 15-20 minutes over here, now actually we have till 3:15 p.m. with the questions and answers, so let me see how much time I have, 20 minutes or so maybe, before we go to questions. What I'm going to do now is talk about one of these guys over here who I've evaluated personally, and I thought would be a really good story to tell to my students, to my clients, to the people who followed me before, because that really seems to solve many of the issues that I've been seeing in the market for many, many months now, and actually many, many years, to be honest, for 2007. And that's AgilePoint. Okay, AgilePoint. Why did I pick AgilePoint? Here are a few of the reasons. First of all, what I saw in there is that there's a very easy to use Visio environment, right? All it is a Visio add-in that you put on there, and of course there's an AgilePoint Enterprise server as well, which actually takes the workflows after you build it in Visio. But you can make the no-code solutions directly in Visio, very easy to do. I have a story to tell you about the dedicated customer service part over here. This is a true story. Just like you guys, and by the way, thank you very much again for coming to this webinar. I get lots of different emails from people saying, hey, there's this going on, questions from all over the place. I got a question from a lady once saying that, you know what, I don't know you, you don't know me, I follow you, I've read your book, and I follow your webinars, I am in big trouble. Our company has AgilePoint, we just got it, and my boss has told me to go ahead and do something here, and I have no idea where to start even, because nobody told me where to start. She's like, my job is dependent on this. So all I did was I talked to one of the guys at AgilePoint, and I didn't even not know AgilePoint folks at that time at all. They didn't know who I was. They said, hey, you know what, there's a lady out there who is in trouble right now. I was extremely surprised because the CEO of AgilePoint went ahead and took a couple of people out of their project, gave a couple hours direct customer service to this lady, because we knew how much of a dire situation she was in. And she was so ecstatic to get this help, to get it going and make her workflow using, and once she got going, she understood it's so easy to make workflows in AgilePoint. That kind of customer service is what really sold me on AgilePoint. Here's another thing. Microsoft's gold standard, I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but you're not supposed to have any installation of proprietary web services, Windows services, no access to local databases, no access to registry. All those kind of things are what you need to follow to be a Microsoft's gold standard compliant, having this kind of a policy for SharePoint. So if you're not following the gold level customization policy for SharePoint, then what? What happens? Well, the way I understand it is that if you call for service later to Microsoft and say, hey, I have this need to get this fixed in SharePoint, and if you're not following these gold standards, then you get hit with a huge bill saying that, okay, here's what you need to pay first before we go into your quote-unquote customized environment. And what I saw here is AgilePoint does keep the Microsoft's gold standard, and you don't really customize, quote-unquote, your environment by using AgilePoint, which is an awesome, awesome deal. And, you know, like I said, real workflows, you need to be able to access other parts of your systems as well, like your Active Directory, maybe creating some users over there, or like your Exchange server, sending in email directly from there or getting some information from there, or like maybe SAP or some other kind of integration. And that AgilePoint provides as well. And oh man, yeah, the entry price is very affordable. This is a very big shock to me, because when I thought, you know, any product like this, like AgilePoint or whatever else, they're going to cost a lot of money. So what's the point? Why even think about this thing? But I looked at what's going on right now in the market, and I saw what my own rate is right now. And actually, my rate is a little bit higher. But regular average rate, I see about $150 per hour is what consultants are charging, right, to make a typical medium complexity workflow. Okay, so you bring in a consultant, they use Visual Studio, they make a medium complexity workflow, and how much is that now? $150 per hour. Let's say it takes a week. $6,000 right there. Okay, and I've seen that happen many times. That happens all the time, that kind of stuff. But then what happens is that workflow becomes very, very proprietary type of knowledge. It can only be used in certain situations. You need to manage that workflow code and all that stuff. This becomes a very, very difficult thing to manage, unfortunately, from what I've seen. Here's what I found out. The AgilePoint's SharePoint Express Edition is $5,000. Okay, that was unbelievable to me. That's like the starting point right there. And then, of course, I think this is for 25 concurrent users, and then after that you can go for more. But that's an amazing deal, the way I look at it. Okay, so that's what really, really sold me on AgilePoint, and I want to go ahead and show you a little bit more on AgilePoint right now. Since I talked to AgilePoint folks, and they were gracious enough to hook me up with a demo environment. So as much as I know right now, I'm going to go ahead and show you, and hopefully that could help you in your decision. And let's see. And if you have any questions, of course, go ahead and put those questions out there. Let's see. That's not it. I want to bring up the other environment that I have. Hang on a second. And as I bring this up and show you things, focus on the limitations of what SharePoint currently has right now and what this product provides. So first thing, what I'm going to do is I'll log in as a person called Andy. So let me use Andy, log into the SharePoint portal, and this is just a AgilePoint site that's been put on the portal. Nothing too big. I'm going to go to my files over here. Let's see. Here's it. Here's the InfoPath form that I want to use. It's called the Capital Appropriation Request. And this form has many different views. It has the car request view, the departmental header approval, and the finance manager approval. Basically, somebody fills out a form for capital expenditure or capital appropriation request approval. The department head approval is the one who needs to go ahead and look at the form, say that if it's yeah, approve, I don't approve. And finance manager has to look at, of course, the form and say I approve or don't approve. And look at how deep the schema is for this one. This is what I was talking about. Lots of different things going on here, right? So using this product, it was so simple to make this happen. Here's what you do. First, I have this form already published to a library. Let me show you this library. It's called the Car Approval Demo. All right, and in this case, I do have a few fields that have been published, have been promoted. All right. Then you open up Visio. Visio is your best friend when working with AgilePoint stuff. And here you have this thing called Microsoft InfoPath template. All right, keep this in mind that what I'm about to do right now, actually this whole demo, this should be like about 10 minutes or so, none of these things require Visio Premium. It's just regular Visio. If you have Visio 2007 even, it's going to work just fine. So Visio 2007, Visio 2010, doesn't matter what Visio you have. And also the type of workflow visualization, the type of stuff that I'm going to show you in terms of getting information from the InfoPath form, getting information or pushing information to a database, all those things work in SharePoint 2007 and SharePoint 2010, which is awesome to have. Okay, I'm going to click on Microsoft InfoPath, click on Create, and he's just asking me over here that which form do you want to use? I want to use capital appropriation routing form. That's and let me go ahead and close that form first, just in case. So I want to use that form. And the reason it asks me that question, so then it attaches to that form, is because, and this is a requirement for many people, you want to go ahead and push out the information from this form to a list, to a database, and here's how you do it. You click on data population, and I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, login as myself. It's administrator. So here, if I click on advanced, I believe, and this might take a few seconds, but what advanced does, it lets me pick, here we go, a repository where I want to push this data out to. How simple is that? Push it out to SQL Server, Oracle, or a SharePoint list. It does require for you to put the connection string in, etc., but there's also a basic way of doing it, which is the one that I did not pick. You don't even have to do this stuff right here. Pretty easy to do. You configure it, publish it out there, and then once you have the connection to a database or a SharePoint list, etc., you can map your columns or you can map your fields. You can say that my field in InfoPath, for example, the amount requested field or whatever else field, should go to this field in the database or in the SharePoint list. Very easy to do. Okay, and then you got lots of different shapes over here. Agile point, Active Directory shapes, database access shapes, Exchange server, SAP, and SharePoint. Let me pull up SharePoint here. Check it out. New site collection, new library. These kind of things are not available in out of the box kind of Visio, even with Visio Premium 2010. Being able to just take a new site over here and configuration of this new site component, you go to SharePoint integration. Just like that, it tells you what the title of the site is going to be, where the locale. Well, locale is just 1033, which is SharePoint. I'm sorry, which is English. And then exactly where you want to create your site. If you want unique permissions, if you want to manage, if you want unique permissions, or if you want to inherit permissions from the top level site, etc. Set some of these things, and you're done. So what you're doing here is you're actually making the workflow. You're not modeling the workflow, you're making the workflow, and that's something that, to me, it took me by surprise as well when I was first seeing this and making this happen. New site, copying files. Okay, you have creating SharePoint group. Check this out. Creating SharePoint group. If I go to SharePoint integration, it says, I'm going to click on configure here, where you want to create the group, what's the group name, the group owner, group description, etc. Very simple. Very simple to do over here. All right, let me open up another environment which is already set up. Okay, so I'll go to, here it is. Now, what I'm about to show you is just a workflow that takes about 10 minutes to build, literally. And if you don't know exactly what you're doing to begin with, then it will take about 20 minutes to build. It's still very, very simple to make. You have to start, and then you have, okay, this thing is a manual activity, which is this one right here in Agile Point. Here's how powerful this thing is. What I'm doing over here is I have this hooked up to an InfoPath form, the one that I had connected to before as well. And if you click on this icon here, say View InfoPath Form, it shows you the exact view of the InfoPath form that's going to be shown to the user when this activity is executed. Okay. The way this is set up is if you click on the, I believe, the process repository. Oh, that's not it. Yeah, I'm still very new to this thing also. Just, here we go, participants. If you click on participants, it just says the person who actually initiated the form is the one who gets to see the form. Simple enough. Okay. And let's see. So now, after this form is filled out, it goes, this icon right here represents a web service. Very simple to even to set up web services. You set up a web service connection. Just like here, you give it the exact place where you want to go to the web service to get information or to submit information, and then you configure it. There's configuration properties underneath here. But it's all clicking, it's all setting up the properties. There's no coding, there's no compilation or anything like that. this whole thing does not produce any EXEs, any DLLs. It just produces the XML files that are needed for the AgilePoint server to go ahead and publish the workflow out to SharePoint server. Very simple to do. Now, you have another one here. I forgot to show you one more thing over here. Remember the modified data population that I showed you in the other Visio, which was blank? This form right now, Visio diagram right now is attached to the InfoPath form. So it understands InfoPath form. That's right here. This deep schema that is involved in InfoPath. You can go ahead and map things out directly from the schema properties to the end repository. So currently, this is pushing information out to this database table, car InfoPath. In SQL Server, if I go into AgilePoint Tracking Database, which by the way is the only database that gets instantiated by AgilePoint, just one database, so easy to manage. Here it is. This is a table that it's going to, and it's going to go ahead and push out all the fields that I map out from InfoPath directly to this table. Okay, simple enough. And the way you make these connections, let me go ahead and remove one. I'm going to delete it. You go to the InfoPath field and you say, okay, I want to map this out to the amount field here. The blue line just means over here that's going to do some conversion automatically, which is awesome. So if I have, let's say, the money field or the some other field in the database that needs some kind of conversion, and the InfoPath field does not have that same type of data type, it will go ahead and convert it for me. Or I can even say, do a custom data conversion. Okay, very easy to do. Now, remember, I mentioned before that the workflows in Visio, workflows in SharePoint out of the box, cannot be state machine workflows. It has to be sequential in nature. This one can. So this one here, there's a condition here saying that if, let's say, the actual form is approved by people, right? By the data person, by the department head, and then by the finance manager, go ahead and send a request notification, or rejection notification to the person who did not fill this out properly or had some issues in the form. But then after that, once again start the workflow with the submit car action. I think this is very cool. So it counts the passes that it takes. First pass, second pass, third pass, and you know how many times this person, for example, is trying to fill out the form. Maybe there's some issues in the form. Maybe the department is not approving it. Maybe the finance manager is not approving. All those things are happening under the covers, and it just lets you know in the AgilePoint reporting statistics of exactly how many passes it takes to make it happen, and then you can go ahead and take corrective actions if you wanted to. Okay. And by the way, this is something that I want to mention over here. The approval process, completely parallel in nature. Okay. Once again, this will work great in even SharePoint 2007. To doing parallel work, parallel approvals here, sequential work approvals, no problem without doing any coding. Now we have some parallel branching and parallel approval process in SharePoint 2010, but 2007 we had nothing. And here this is a lot more powerful actually. And then this is something that I love also here. Once your approval is done, let's say, and you want to go ahead and maybe archive the report, the Word document, Excel document, whatever it is, or PDF to some archival location, you can go ahead and do that. Very simple. You say create a report. You tell it exactly where to upload it. So if I click on this and say SharePoint integration, exactly the destination URL where you want to upload it. What do you want to call the workflow? The information in this case, and that's it, just like that. Okay. Let's see. What else did I miss over here? I know there's so much stuff that I could show you over here about AgilePoint because I've personally been really, really impressed by it. So you have the state machine. Okay. Let's see. What if I go ahead and publish this out? Now, how do you publish this? That's the question. How do you publish this from Visio directly to SharePoint server? You go to the AgilePoint tab, you click on Publish Process to Server. Once again, who are you publishing as? I'm publishing as administrator, so I'm going to click on OK. it versions your workflows. So automatically it's going to version your workflow from Visio to tell it, okay, go ahead and use this new version. Here's another thing that happens quite a bit. What if a policy changes happen, or maybe a new government regulation requires you to make a change to your existing process, right? And you need to go ahead and push this process out as soon as possible, otherwise you would be non-compliant. You know what happens right now? You need to have your existing workflows finish, because those cannot be updated. The existing workflows cannot be updated in this case. So what you do in this case is you say, okay, any new workflow from now on is going to get this new update. That is not the case here. In this case, you can go ahead and you can update your existing running workflows, whether it be 1, 5, 1,000, doesn't matter, or your existing and your new workflows. You can go ahead and update all the workflows, okay, just like that, and updating it when the actual workflow is running, that is like a godsend, I think, because I know many companies fall into trouble by not being able to update their processes when they are running specifically, or take out approvers, put in approvers, or things like that, or take some policies, do some records management, anything like that you can do over here. So here, if I click on OK, I think it should work fine. And the way this would work now is if I go ahead and let's see, go into the demo site as Andy, and I make a new approval process. So if I go to demo and I say add document, let's see. So I am going ahead and saying that I'm going to request some money for new new pool table. Okay. Functional area is going to be HR. City is going to be LA. Let's say dollar amount that I'm requesting right now is $3,200. A pretty expensive pool table, I guess. You want to attach a file? No problem. InfoPath lets you do that. I'm going to attach a sample file here. And see, right after I did that, it's changed the view in this case to show me the approver. Okay, this is the Agile point at work over here. Who do you want to be the approver? I want to be manager. Submit. Card's been initiated. Okay, so this is in process right now. If I click on the in progress, where is it? Here we go. Show me a nice visualization. And this visualization will work in 2007, 2010, no problem. Shows exactly which items have been done, which are still going. If I click on any of these items, it will show me the activity, the information about it, when it was started. Lots of good stuff. Okay, now if I log in as somebody else, let me log in as the manager. The manager, of course, is going to go ahead and look at this form. Now, there's some awesome charts, by the way, also showing exactly which processes are running, how many times the requests have been submitted by different people, etc. You see in the red over here, it shows the requests that are, well, they've been pending from before, and the ones that have expired. So the due date is in the past. All right, the one I'm interested in right now is this one. And there's all different things that I can do over here. If I click on View Process as a manager, I can see the process running. This is completely Ajax, by the way, so this will update automatically. Let me leave this window up. Click on this approval again and say open department head approval. Okay, so I approve. Now this is a new view of the form that is being presented to me because I am the manager, so it understands who it is and is showing me the workflow, the form that's for me to look at. Submit and close, and done. So now I'm going to go as the third person, which is a CFO, the finance manager. And actually, before I go there, let me also show the process viewer to you right now. See, it says the department head approval is done. The finance manager approval is the one that is taking place right now. Okay. I'm going to go now as a CFO and open finance manager approval process. Here we go. Once again, I see a different approval process, a different view of the form, for CFO. Submit. Let's see what happens now. If I go back to my process viewer. Okay, it's a little refreshing over here, but here we go. It went ahead to the whole process. It's all done. And you can leave the process viewer running in the background. You will see exactly what's going on. So that's pretty cool. And if I go to the car approval demo, here's a new folder that it created for me, car archive, and it moved my form, the LA money for the new pool table, directly in this library. So there's a lot of stuff happening here, and quite honestly, I mean, there's no technical requirement to make this kind of a complex workflow. I mean, if I can make it, I think anybody can make it in this case. Even though I come from a technical background, but still, right now I don't do any coding stuff, and this is extremely easy for a business analyst, for a business user to go ahead and make. Okay, I believe I touched upon all the points over there that I wanted to make. Let me see if you guys have any questions that I can answer here. Okay, let's see. And let me go ahead and switch this view also. Okay, by the way, this webinar and other webinars are all on the site, like I mentioned before. And here's some call to actions. Before I take any questions, that you can watch the free videos on our site. Check out AgilePoint at agilepoint.com. If you need more information, you know, of course, no sales pressure here. If you just need information, let me know. I'm not a sales guy for AgilePoint, just to let you know, by the way. This is a product that I personally have seen, and I think that's going to help my customers, so that's why I'm suggesting it. And let's see. You can connect with us, of course, with the bi-monthly newsletter. Fill out the survey, always helps. Thank you very much. And let me go ahead and look at the questions here. All right. Somebody was asking about the AgilePoint Express Edition over here. Yeah, the Express Edition is the one that that gives you almost all the functionality that I showed you, all the SharePoint type of functionality. Absolutely. Okay. I'm going to skip through all the questions here that have the echo feedback. Let me get to some real questions here. My SharePoint implementation is with SharePoint 2007. Does my SharePoint infrastructure also have to be v2010 for all this to work? Yeah, so the stuff that I showed earlier, the out-of-the-box functionality, all that stuff, you need SharePoint 2010 to be able to you know, work with those things. But the AgilePoint stuff that I showed, that does not require any, it does not require 2010. So that's your response, Shannon. Nicole, do end users need Visio or InfoPath on their computer to use the forms, or can they use it within SharePoint? So the way this works, Nicole, is InfoPath is required for the designer who's actually designing the form, but then after that, the people who are filling out the form, they just need, you know, browser. They need to access to the browser. If you have SharePoint Server Enterprise running, okay, SharePoint Server Enterprise at the server level is a requirement for you to fill out the forms using the browser. If you don't have SharePoint Server Enterprise, then you need the InfoPath client to fill out your form. Okay. Let's see. Could you please elaborate on the InfoPath Filler and Designer? Okay, so that's what I just did right now. Filler is the one that you need to fill out the form. Designer is the one that you need to design the form. You just need one designer copy. That's all you need. Okay, can you take a SharePoint solution with workflows developed in 2007, move it to SharePoint 2010? Oh, that's a good question. And then bring them with Visio to examine the workflows created. Okay. So can you take a SharePoint solution with workflows developed in 2007 and move it? Not really. Unfortunately, what you would need to do is you need to upgrade the whole site. If you upgrade the site, then the workflows that are in the site will get upgraded with it. But what you cannot do in 2007 and 2010 is you cannot back up a workflow in 2007 and then take it to 2010, unfortunately. Okay. Oh, custom SPD action. That's a good one. So, you know, the Visio stuff that I showed you, the Visio actions in Visio 2010 Premium, those actions, you cannot make new actions in there. Same thing with conditions. With AgilePoint, you can. With AgilePoint, you can make new actions, new conditions, and put them in Visio. But out of the box, if you just use Visual Studio, for example, maybe you're a developer or somebody, and try to put the new shapes, the new actions in Visio, that will not work, unfortunately. You can do it in SharePoint Designer, but you can't do it in Visio. Microsoft did not allow that capability, unfortunately. Okay, with AgilePoint you cannot. With AgilePoint you can. Out of the box, you cannot in that case. Somebody's saying I was running late this morning. Will the webinar be available? Yes, Emma. The webinar will be available as a recording afterwards. Just give me a couple of days and I'll send a newsletter about that later. Can you show us how Designer knew about the field values you picked? Example, department. Okay, so Fiona, I believe. See, the Designer, SharePoint Designer was attached to a library, the training request library. That's the first demo that I did, right? And because it was attached to the library, it knew exactly the fields in the library. So that's how it knew about those fields. Once again, if you wanted to make it a reusable workflow, then you would not have that capability, unfortunately. Okay, if you make a reusable workflow, then, you know, unfortunately, it will just show up only the shared fields that are available on that content type that you're attached to. All right, let's see. I have another organizer here too, by the way, Nishant. If you're there, go ahead and if you want to answer any questions. Let's see. What else have we got? What are the advantages of first doing it in Visio if you could have done the whole thing using SharePoint Designer? Awesome question, Jacqueline. You know, I have seen personally many people are scared of SharePoint Designer. Okay, just because it seems like a more technical tool. People have no problem opening up Visio just like PowerPoint or anything else, but as far as SharePoint Designer comes, they say, oh, I don't want to do this. You know, unless they get trained or they understand it, they don't want to get into it. Because of that, you probably want to go to Visio first and then go to SharePoint Designer. Now, the cool thing is that it doesn't matter where you start making your workflow. As long as you make your workflow, you can go ahead and push it back to Visio, and then in Visio, it will show you the visualization of that workflow. So that works great. It's just that if you go to Visio, out of the box stuff, and you try to configure your actions and conditions in there, that will not work. So you have to bring it back to SharePoint Designer to configure your conditions, configure your actions. All right, let's see. So what else we got here? It is just Visio that can't create looping state machine workflows, or is a limitation of SharePoint Designer as well? Yes, Kevin, I am so sorry but to deliver this bad news, but the looping mechanisms or the state machine stuff, all that stuff, you need a product like AgilePoint. Otherwise, you're stuck going through Visual Studio. So, not that it's not possible, by the way. SharePoint Designer is capable of doing looping mechanisms, but the activity for that kind of stuff does not come out of the box. You would need to make that activity from scratch using Visual Studio and then push it out to SharePoint Designer, and then you can do some looping. But unfortunately, it doesn't exist. Okay. Let's see. Christina, is there any way to use the Visio workflow with InfoPath 2007 or MOS? Unfortunately not. Now, out of the box, you cannot. Out of the box functionality for Visio, you cannot take to 2007. But the good news over here is that if you're using AgilePoint, and it's just an add-in basically that you're doing on Visio, 2007, 2010, no problem. You can go ahead and publish to 2007 and it'll work just fine. It's amazing the ease of it is. I'm really, really surprised and happy to see it that way. Let's see. There's a question about 25 concurrent users that I talked about before. Nishant, do you want to take that one? Okay, the Express edition that I talked about is for 25 concurrent users, so exactly what that means. I think Nishant, who is actually helping me in this webinar, is more aware of that limitation, so I want to leave it to him. Our company uses 2007 SharePoint. Will the AgilePoint and the Designer 2007 work the same way? Absolutely. Jim, keep one thing in mind. You asked this question, keep one thing in mind. There's one thing that I showed that is going to be a little bit different. See, in the form that I was filling out using the AgilePoint product stuff, the form that I was filling it out in the browser, right? That filling it out in the browser functionality still requires SharePoint Server Enterprise, whether 2010 or 2007, that's fine. But if you don't have SharePoint Server Enterprise, you just use the InfoPath Filler application to fill out the form, or the users use that. Everything else that I showed, the Visio visualization, the charts, the graphs, the looping mechanism, the conditional statements going out to Exchange Server, all that stuff is all there in AgilePoint. You can do that for 2007, no problem. Chris is asking, where did you learn all this thing? This is incredibly complex. Yeah, Chris, it takes a long time, and I'm still learning. There's a lot more that I need to learn. But if you guys have any feedback for me, let me know. Okay. I have been using K2 for 3 years and completely versed in it, both Blackpoint and Black Pearl. Does AgilePoint have the ability to configure custom workflows with code there for Visual Studio? You know what? I think it does. But once again, I'm going to let Nishant answer this question. I have seen that you can make workflows, or actually conditions and actions using Visual Studio with Agile parts and push it out to Visio. Seen that functionality. So I believe that's going to be about the same over here. Let's see. Somebody's saying, email me a link to this presentation so I can show it to my client. No problem, Carl. You will all get a invitation to watch this webinar and many other webinars. And if you have any feedback, of course, please put it in the survey. I always appreciate that. If you have other ideas of webinars, that's fine as well. Let me know. Okay. Let's see. What else you got over here? Looking for more questions here that I've not answered. Can you publish the new field manager approved, denied to a SharePoint column? See, that's another thing. So Bill, you're asking, can you publish this new field manager that I made, right? The option buttons, can you publish it to a SharePoint column? You could if you were using a web service to make that happen. I'm sorry, I think you mean over here when I'm publishing it to a form library, can you make that happen? Okay, yes, that you can do. For a form library, you can do that. But if you want to publish it out to a SharePoint list, or if you want to publish it out to database or something like that, then you would need a web service for that to happen. Unless you use AgilePoint, then AgilePoint lets you do it without doing any coding whatsoever, which works out great for me at least. Okay, let's see what else you got over here. I know we're kind of late over time right now, but I can stay a few more minutes to go ahead and answer questions. I'd like to know if the recording of this webcast will be available for later time. Yes. Hey, Chi, yeah, it's going to be available. Catherine, in the demo, how does the manager know that she needs to review a request? So see, the manager, in what I was showing before, has gotten an email, and that's how the manager knows. Another thing is the task list that shows up in the SharePoint site also shows the task for the manager. I'm sorry I wasn't clear about that before, but that's how the manager would know. Rich, you're asking, is there a practical number of steps the workflow can handle? What define practical, really? You know, workflows can be extremely complex, and what I've seen out of the market is that usually workflows are complex, very, very complex. I mean, they go beyond sometimes what I can really understand also, and then the good thing is that if you have the workflow documented, if you have reports being generated automatically from the workflow, which AgilePoint does as well, out of the box, unfortunately, we don't have anything good like that for reporting. But if you have those kind of things, and if you have the ability to maybe even split your workflow, so one workflow kicks off another workflow, then it will work fine. Then you can make really, really complex workflows and then componentize them so you can understand it, you can document it easily. Word about reporting, by the way. There's this thing called the history list that is there in SharePoint. The history list automatically gets cleared off after every, I forget, like 60 or 90 days, something like that. So don't completely rely on the history list for it to provide you the history of the workflow forever, because it will not be there forever. It gets purged out, or so the only thing that you can do is turn on auditing. You can turn on auditing for certain events, and that will let you go ahead and track what's going on. AgilePoint does that out of the box. It will give you the tracking, give you the history of what has happened. So, but that's so it's a third-party product, and that does that really nicely out of the box. With AgilePoint out of the box. SharePoint out of the box does not, unfortunately. Okay, Thanks, very helpful. Have to log off. Somebody said, okay, no problem. See you later, Robert. Pramod, I have a question about deploying the work or changes so we do onto SharePoint. I'm sorry, where does this go? Okay, I have a question about deploying the work we do onto SharePoint servers such as dev, production. Oh, okay. I know what you're asking. So Pramod, you're asking that what if you want to push the workflow out, right? And you want to push it out to different places. First, you want to push it out to dev, then you want to push it out to staging, integration testing, production. You know, that's another really cool thing about AgilePoint. The way it works is you can go ahead and give it different server names, exactly the server locations, and then you can have that into in a variable basically, and then that variable you can just go ahead and change it in one place, and it knows exactly where to publish the workflow. So if you're in the dev environment, you have the variable changed to point to hit the dev environment. Then somewhere you go ahead and change it to the staging environment, and you go ahead and production environment. So your staging of the actual workflow and then pushing it out to production, the whole process becomes really, really easy. Out of the box, I'm very sorry, but there is no easy way to do that, unfortunately. You can take the workflow, you can save the workflow. That's one thing you can do. Workflows, reusable workflows, I should say, can be saved as a .wsp file. It's called the SharePoint solution file, basically. Once you have a workflow packaged as a SharePoint solution file, you can save that package in somewhere where you want to do versioning, for example, and then use that package to deploy it to different environments. So you can take that .wsp file, publish it out or push it out to, let's say, your staging environment and then to production environment, and then you activate the solution. The solution package, you activate it, and then it will go ahead and start running over there. All right, let me take a couple more. So Helen said, thank you. You're welcome, Helen. Are there any ways to approve on behalf of a person? Any feature in AgilePoint that supports that? Nishant, do you want to go ahead and take that one? But I'm pretty sure you can. You can go ahead and delegate. You can delegate the actual approval process, so somebody else can approve it. So you can say that, okay, I'm going to Hawaii right now, right? And I'm going to go ahead and push it out to somebody else. As the workflow is running, you can reassign the task to somebody else and then be on your way to Hawaii. Absolutely, I'm 99.999% sure that yes, it does work that way. John said, have to go. Very informative. Thanks a million. Okay, you're welcome. Sanjay, when will we get videos on SharePoint 2010 branding? Oh boy, yeah, working on it. Hopefully we'll have some branding stuff as well. We don't have any branding videos on SharePoint 2010. Branding is a monster. That's a separate topic altogether, so I won't go into it too much. But the way branding works in SharePoint, you need the appropriate master pages, style sheets, and then very much, of course, the images and everything else. And that's how you make your branding. That's, of course, saying it very, very simply. The way it actually works under the covers is extremely complex. Hopefully soon. Don't have the plans yet, but hopefully soon. Okay. Can you use Visio visualization to monitor a workflow that is created in VS 2010? So Tariq, that's a very good question. Yes. If you make a workflow in Visio 2010, push it out to SharePoint, the visualization for that workflow is going to be exactly the same as a visualization for a workflow that was produced using either out-of-the-box functionality or using SharePoint Designer. No problem. Okay. Are they adding Codeplex conditions activities for SharePoint Designer 2010? Russ, how you doing, Russ? Yes, they are actually. They are adding Codeplex activities for SharePoint Designer 2007, and to my knowledge, that those activities do work in SharePoint Designer 2010 as well. That's to my knowledge. I have not used them in 2010 yet. That's what I've been told. And I don't know why you're asking this, but you're saying that is Asif single? No, I am not single. I don't know how that question came in there, Russ. All right. I just try to make time to do all this stuff, but no, I am not single. I have a couple of kids who I love. The sort of designer comes with the filler. Okay, Roger, you're asking that question. Does the designer, SharePoint designer, I'm sorry, not designer, but the InfoPath designer comes with a filler? Yes, it does. When you get licensing for InfoPath designer, it comes with the filler as well. Richard, you're asking, can you send a page article via email embedded as HTML using a SharePoint Designer 2010 workflow? Yeah, that is a problem. You cannot. The activities in SharePoint Designer are pretty limited. So the email activity, for example, will let you email stuff, but it won't let you attach anything. AgilePoint can do this, but out of the box in SharePoint Designer, unfortunately, you cannot. All right, folks, it's 2:30, actually it's 3:32 right now where you are, so or Eastern time at least. So I'm going to let you guys go. You can watch the webinar recording online. You can go ahead and reach out to me if you like, if you need more information about the webinar, anything else. I try to answer all the emails that I get. Try really, really hard. Sometimes I don't succeed, but I try really hard. So until next time, thank you very much for joining me. I'll stop the recording right now and take care, folks. Thank you.